Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Bonnie Brzozowski, and I'm a public services librarian at the Corvallis-Benton County Public Library. This afternoon, we are grateful to have Carissa Hedick, the Executive Director within the Red Cross Cascades region, with us to share strategies and tips to better prepare ourselves when disaster strikes. With her years of experience helping people through natural disasters and wildfires, she brings the expertise we need to improve our preparedness. Before I invite Carissa to join us, I just want to point out that you may ask a question at any time during the presentation by clicking or tapping on the question mark and then typing in your question. We will take questions the entire time, as I said, but we will also have time for question and answer at the end. Yeah, so please submit your questions. An email with a link to the recording of this presentation will be sent to all who registered for this event. So thanks again for being with us today, and I would like to go ahead and invite Carissa to join us on screen so we can get started. Carissa?
Hi,
Great.
thank you, Bonnie, for the invitation for the Red Cross to present to the city of Corvallis. Again, my name is Carissa Hedick, and I'm the executive director for the Red Cross. Been with the Red Cross 11 years, and in this role for 6 years. And our Southwest Oregon chapter represents 11 counties. So it's Lincoln, Lynn, Benton on the north side of the chapter, and it goes all the way south to Lake Klamath, Jackson, and Curry to the south. So oftentimes people think of Red Cross, they think of us as blood and flood. You see us on the national news when we're responding to the hurricanes and tornadoes, especially the most recent ones in Kentucky that happened around the Christmas time. But also we manage 40% of the nation's blood supply. Red Cross also facilitates emergency messages to service members. We teach first aid CPR classes, and we talk about preparedness, which is what we're going to be doing today. So um, I just a little bit of some background. When I first started off in my career, I was a disaster program manager in a small chapter in North Carolina that only had 4 counties. And I went out to all the daytime home fires and some of the evening and weekend home fires. And within the course of 1 year, I went to about 60 home fires. So, and I'd never seen a home fire before in my life. And then as I got to do more deployments with the Red Cross to the wildfires and to Hurricane Harvey, I really see the really big impact it has locally. And of course, the experiences that we had in 2020 with the Labor Day fires. So Red Cross during like what we call blue sky days, which is when, well, right now it's a little bit gray, but blue sky days when we're not in a disaster mode, we really encourage preparedness and shoring up our response capabilities to be able to respond to the larger disasters. And also, just so you know, 90% of the workforce of the Red Cross is volunteers. So we are a very large organization, and so that is where we are. So I'll kind of get started here. I think what I'll do is I should be able to, do you see this program right here? I'm hoping you do.
Yes.
So, oh, perfect. Okay.
Perfect.
Yep. So this is a prepare guide that we have, and we can send these to Bonnie at the Corvallis Library. This is a really great, it's like 40 or 50 pages long. It has preparedness tips for all the different types of disasters, for landslides and wildfires and winter storms and floods. And each disaster is a little bit different. Like with a hurricane, you know it's coming, right? You can have it forecasted out, 3-4 days. But then if you have a wildfire, you're like what happened in Boulder, or like with the Holiday Farm fire that we had here in Lane County, you just had moments to leave, depending on kind of where it is. So every fire is a little bit different. And also kind of how well prepared you are in advance really helps in your recovery. So to get informed, right? We live in Oregon, and Oregon's a beautiful place. And you've got the oceans and, Crater Lake and the rivers. But guess what? All of these things were formed by nature, and formed by earthquakes over many, 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 many years ago. And just because it was formed many, many years ago doesn't mean that things still aren't current now. So we've all heard about the Cascadia subduction zone, or many of us have. And we'll get into that a little bit later into this program. But the whole point to these pictures is, as beautiful as this stuff is, it also can be very deadly. Whether it's tsunami or flooding or wildfires or like that. So, and the reason why we really want to talk about preparedness is on a national average, okay, national average, there is one first responder, like EMT, fireman, paramedic, per 374 people across the country. So think about that. If a big event happens, like a wildfire, and you're evacuating or something happened to your house, the ratio is 1 to 374 people. So I've worked with the Red Cross many years, and the fire chiefs will often tell me, if you think that the fire department is going to drive down, this is what they tell us. If you think the fire department is going to drive down your street and say, Mrs. Jones, are you okay? It's not really going to happen, especially the first day or two or three, because one, they're overwhelmed, and two, they're responding to larger facilities or larger events. And so it's really up to you and your neighbors in a home preparedness setting to really take care of your own. And that's what neighbors did in a lot of the fires. One of our volunteers, who's actually from Corvallis, he deployed to the Kentucky tornadoes, and he worked in logistics and procurement. That was his focus area. But he met a lot of mental health workers, and they would go out and have dinner afterwards, and the mental health workers would share, not names or ages or anything, but just share stories about what had happened. And he said that there's one particular, one of the big tornadoes kind of hovered over a town for 20 minutes, and it just thrashed everything. And it was just a raging storm for 20 minutes. And then when it stopped, all the people heard were screams from their neighbors. And so it was like this deadly tornado, and then pure silence, and then all you heard was screaming, and they came from the neighbors. And so they were the ones who were the first ones to like pull rubble off of them and to kind of get, saved. So that's why, any ounce of preparedness you can do in advance can only help. So these are the types of disasters that you would encounter kind of in our region, which is Oregon, Southwest Washington. So we'll talk not all of these throughout this program, because a lot of these events are listed in the Prepare Guide that will be sent up to the Corvallis office. But we'll talk about a few of them. The attention grabbers, like the tornadoes and the hurricanes and the wildfires, that's what you see on the national news. But there's actually, house fires is the #1 disaster across the country. And there are 2 to 3 home fires a day that happen across our region that you may not be aware of. You see it on the news every now and then, but it's not an impact. But that one person, they lost their house just like they would during a landslide. So again, home fires, the best protection you have is early detection, right? You get that through the smoke alarms. And the key is that you want to have one smoke alarm in every bedroom. You want to have one in the hallway and one in the living room. And if you have a basement or upstairs, you also want to have one on every floor of your house. Now, also, there's 2 different types of alarms. There's like ionization alarms, and then there's called like a photo something kind of alarm. I forget the name of it. So one of them detects smoke, and the other one detects heat. And it's always a good idea to have a combination of both inside your house. Just because one could be slow brewing. I'll share an example, right? And I'll share a couple of examples, as I know people like to hear. So I met, actually he's an elected official, a couple years ago, and he and his family was affected by a home fire. And their 2 sons had bunk beds, and the wife was doing laundry. And so she kind of tossed a load of laundry onto the top bunk. And one of their sons had a reading lamp, the one that kind of had like the real simple on off switch. Well, when the wife tossed the laundry on top of the top bunk, it just switched on the light unknowingly. And it was like, heating up. It was on the whole entire time for like several hours. And then the mom and the boys were staying up watching a movie, and all of a sudden the smoke alarms went off. And the heat had been going on long enough that it caught their bed on fire and the whole house on fire just by a simple thing like that. So that's one of the indications of having sort of a heat sensing alarm, and then a smoke sense, like a smoke one, like when you're burning bacon around your house. And the smoke alarms that we're installing now, this is one of the free programs that the Red Cross is doing, is that we have been installing smoke alarms in the last 6 or 7 years now. It's called the Home Fire Campaign. And our goal was to lower the instances of death and injury by 25%. And we've installed more than 2 million smoke alarms across the country, and we're up to 1,200 documented saved lives. So these are lives that we would have gone out and canvassed a neighborhood. A lot of them are high risk that we go to, but sometimes like anyone and everyone can just dial in and hear about what the Red Cross is doing, and they would say, I'd like a free smoke alarm. And then we show up and we've got these lithium battery smoke alarms that we put on the walls for you completely free. So the other thing that we want to talk about is the fire escape plan. I mean, having smoke alarm is one, but then realizing you have less than 2 minutes to get out of your house. And that's what we talk about. Like, can you open up all the windows in your house, right? Sometimes the older houses, they got those stubborn windows. Can you really open it up, right? Or there's one house that we went to install a smoke alarm, and there's a patio door, and like an 8-foot patio door window, and the lady had a dowel, like one of those wooden 3-foot long dowels that she stuck inside the window. It's a safety thing, that way no one could kind of jimmy the lock from the outside. And I noticed that she had a lot of pictures around her house of her grandchildren, and I said, do your grandkids spend the night here at your house? And she's like, oh yeah, they do. And I said, you just, I mean, not like you have to do anything about it, but just beware that if something were to happen and he wanted to go out the patio door window, you couldn't get out unless you noticed that the dowel was there on the floor. So that's something that you really want to just be aware of, and then teaching your kids to escape. So the other thing is, whether you go out the window or the back door or the front door, you all have to rendezvous. This is what you need to talk about in advance at a designated point, be it the mailbox, be it the neighbor's house, be it someplace. And again, I'll share a story with you about a home fire that I went to back in North Carolina. It was in a mobile home, and it was a mom and 2 girls who were like probably 8 and 12 years old. And the dad was working out of town that week, doing construction work, and he was coming back to town, and they didn't really have a lot of money. And they had gone to Walmart, and they said, we spent $50 on cleaning supplies to clean the house up for dad, so he had a nice clean house when he came home for the week. And they bought one of these potpourri candles, like the little dollar candles that you would sit on the end table next to the couch. So they lit that up, made it smell really nice, and they had a little Chihuahua dog, the little bouncy little things. Well, the Chihuahua dog jumped onto the couch, knocked the Afghan onto the candle that caught fire, burned the couch, and burned the whole entire house down in a matter of minutes. Now, granted, it was a mobile home, so mobile homes tendency, they tend to burn much faster. So the mom and the older girl got out together, but they didn't know where the younger girl was. She had actually gotten out before the mom and the older one did, but they didn't have the meeting point outside their house. And so the mom didn't know where the younger one was. And by that time, the house is fully engulfed because it only takes a matter of minutes. And so the neighbors were trying to hold the mom back from running inside this burning house to find her kid. Like, that's horrible thinking. So it's just the thought of it's horrible. So ultimately the girl was there. And it's one of those lessons where the fire departments say the safest place for a candle is in the kitchen sink. Like, it just is. Potpourri candles are nice, they look great, but you got to be super duper careful where they're placed, um, and having that fire escape plan. So if you are in need, or you know someone that's in need of a smoke alarm, you can jot this number down really quick. You can email the preparedness@redcross.org. You can email any of these ways to call, or you can just get onto our website, and there's a way that you can, the Red Cross Cascades website, and request it. So we are resuming smoke alarm installations. We recently went to Oak Ridge in Lane County because they almost had a wildfire go through their city earlier this summer. We went to Toledo as well, and we actually did a small smoke alarm installation event in Corvallis and installed about 15 alarms in a mobile home park there. So on to earthquakes. So, you look at this map and you've heard about the Ring of Fire, and up and down the coast is very prone to earthquakes. And so talking about the Cascadia subduction zone, there's the North American plate, and then there's the Juan de Fuca plate. So that is really what comprises the Cascadia subduction zone. If you think about, the North American plate is the bigger one, the Juan de Fuca plate's a smaller one. So what happens is lava kind of comes up from the center of the earth and kind of pushes the Juan de Fuca plate, tucking it underneath the larger North American plate. So think of like a bent ruler, right? You have a ruler that's flat, right? Holding it like one ruler in one hand and the other end in the other hand. And then you slowly bend it, bend it, bend it, bend it. And then after a while, it just bends so much that it just snaps, right? And that's what causes the Cascadia subduction earthquake. That's why it's called subduction earthquake. So the last time this happened was on January 28th of 1700. And the reason why we know it happened, for a couple different reasons. So one geologist went out to the coast, and they were kind of digging down where they saw trees up on the bluff that were alive, and then trees, sunken land, that died. So they started digging around the trees that had died, dug down about 6 feet, and they came across tsunami sand. So then they kind of counted the tree rings to the trees that were living up on the bluff, and they counted it back to be within about 6 months of about 300-year-old trees. So that kind of gave an estimation that something happened 300 years ago between the dead ones and with the tsunami sand, and then the live ones with the tree rings. So then you also look into kind of the written history of Japan. It's an island on the far end of the Pacific. Obviously, it's again in the earthquake area. So they've had written history for years, and they talked about this orphan tsunami. So their history says, we have an earthquake, we expect a tsunami. It's just like 1 and 2 together. But this time they had this orphan tsunami come, and they didn't have an earthquake, and it just wiped out their shores. And like, where did this thing come from? Well, they didn't know. It came all the way across the Pacific. And so, but they had it written down as January 28th, 1800. And then also, when you look into the Native American tribes, they talk about their oral history of saying this great big whale sloshed up on the shore, right? This great big boom slosh. And all of that kind of pings around that period of time. So once we figure that out, you look for all those triggers. It comes about every 250 to 300 years. And sadly, we are 22 years overdue. So anyway, we just don't know when, where, and the amount of impact it's going to have. So when an earthquake does happen, the best thing you should do is drop and cover your head and hold on to something, and like hold on to it, because it'll protect you when things come crashing on down over your head. If you're in a wheelchair, just cover down and hold on. So people often think standing in doorways, running outside, are good things to do. But ultimately, you also want to be careful that if you do run outside, think about all the things that could fall down on top of your head, right? the buildings, a lot of buildings in Oregon were not built to earthquake code. We didn't really know about the Cascadia subduction zone till like 30, 40 years ago. And many of our buildings are older than that. And thinking about bridges and the infrastructure that we have on roads, they were not built to 9.0 standards, which is kind of what we expect the Cascadia to be. So you think about the unreinforced masonry that you have on buildings and how that could be, potentially collapsing. The other thing you also want to be attuned to is your homeowner's insurance does not include earthquake insurance. You think that it does, but that's an additional extra. Just like with flood insurance, you have to pay extra for earthquake insurance. So that's something to look into to kind of protect your family. So talking about tsunamis, we all see these blue signs along the coast. You're entering a hazard zone, and you see when you rise, ultimately you want to be 100 feet above sea land to kind of get out of the tsunami area. So what scientists are saying that if and when it does happen, having the Cascadia zone, they say by the time the wave gets to us, it's like 15 to 20 minutes. And you can imagine you'd be like at least a 5-minute earthquake, 5 or 10-minute long earthquake, which is a really long time, something that powerful. And then things are just going to be, if you're on the coast, things are going to be just jumbled, right? The highways are not going to be smooth, right? Trees are going to fall down. A lot of stuff is going to happen. Just don't expect to drive your car to high ground, right? The safest thing to do is to book it on your feet to high ground. And so that is just being aware of your surroundings, when the tsunami happens. And of course, the latest event we can remember with the Japanese tsunami not too long ago. So again, thinking about making that plan, right, for your family, thinking about what are the unique needs of your household? Like, who do you live with? Is it just, you and your spouse? Do you have kids? How old are your kids? Do you live with grandma? Do you have pets? And how will you or your family be alerted of an emergency? So a lot of times, whether you've actually kind of pre-signed up for it or not, you do, or you can get alerts, like you get like the Amber Alerts, for missing child or a snowstorm or wildfire, kind of putting people on notice. I was driving down to the Bootleg fire in Klamath and Lake County this summer, and they had another fire that popped up in Chiloquin, kind of on my way there. And I was just, I live in Lane, but I was driving to Klamath, and even then, my cell phone alerted me saying that there was a wildfire in Chiloquin, and I was like 15 miles away from it. So you do, or you can get notified that way. So you also need to think about, where's your meeting spot? People are back to work, and you think about what side of the river you live on, and what if the river, the bridges collapse? How can you get home? Where's your rendezvous site? And thinking about, your pets and animals and your livestock. This was a huge deal, especially for the RT Beach fire. I think that was in Lynn County, and the amount of livestock that the Lynn County Fairground had during those evacuations. I think there was more livestock than people in the fairgrounds there. So again, thinking of functional needs, dietary needs, medical. I shared the story. We had one of my favorite dogs. He's a cattle dog named Dexter, and he ended up having diabetes. And one of the things that I always did is I had a full vial of insulin, extra insulin in the fridge, and a whole package of needles, because we had to give him shots 2 times a day. And so we had the bottles of insulin that we used, and then when that emptied, we get another one. But I always made sure, just for any event, that I had, the extra needles and the extra insulin, just for him. And so that was one of my added on needs that I did. So again, the emergency notifications, we do have Red Cross apps that you can download. As they say, there's an app for that. So you can get onto Red Cross, you can download a lot of apps. Your county government will also have things you can be alerted from. I recommend also, like, while we have power, right? Apps and cell phones are great, but when we don't have power, you'll need to have emergency radios. And I just recommend getting anything that you can solar oriented or crank oriented, not so much batteries, because the most annoying thing is you're just one AA short on making something work. So, just having a crank battery solar is a really good thing. And then again, talking about your locations out like inside and around your home or even outside your neighborhood. Because, think about, you could have a chemical spill on the railway tracks and they cordon off 2 miles. Well, I can't get home, so where are we going to go? And having that conversation with your family. So this is also super duper important. And it's something that people don't think about as something, but all of our most important information is stored in our phone. So what if you can't charge your phone, or what if you lost your phone? And where's all your contacts and your policy numbers and the 800 numbers to call them? So the best thing to do is take an old-fashioned pen and paper, write everything down. Better yet, put it in a plastic bag or even laminate it. That way it's protected from water and just extra wear and tear. And just, have this stuff all written out. The other thing to do is texting and calling use 2 different frequencies. So if you are in an affected area like Corvallis and everyone's just jamming up the phone lines, you can send text messages because it uses a different frequency. The other thing that you would want to do is pre-identify the out-of-town contact. So that way, if your spouse is at work and you're someplace else, who's going to get the kids, and you can't call each other and you can't text each other, there's also different other frequencies that you can make calls out of your region. So you can call, Aunt Susie in Kansas or Grandma down in Reno. And that way, that person can be the relay to say who's who and where's where in the affected area. So, really just take the time on some rainy Sunday afternoon and just go through your phone and write everything down and go and get it laminated, at one of the office stores, and just have these important numbers, because your head's not thinking straight when something like this happens. And so, and you won't be able to access your emails and what's my insurance agent's name? I can't remember. And so, just get all this stuff down, because an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure when it comes to this. And again, thinking about livestock, so, cats and dogs, but I can tell you, when we went to the bootleg fire, we had a lot more than just cats and dogs. I mean, we had goats, we had chickens, we had snakes, we had gerbils, we had everything, right? All the animals that got saved. And a lot of times, some areas are, community, right? Inside of communities, and others are like, we got 50 head of cattle, and how are we going to get them moved? And how are you going to feed them, right? It was huge logistical things. Now that is something that is more on community partner agencies. It's not something Red Cross will say, we'll, feed, cattle and food. I mean, that's not, we as much as valuable and lovable as animals are, our focus is, the people side. However, we do, in our response, work with other agencies like rescue groups, community partner groups, and they're the ones that help coordinate and do the wraparound services. So we're all in coordination together, but also kind of having a plan. And we also, sometimes shelters that we go to, well, especially in more recent years, people would like to, oftentimes we would have a shelter open at a fairground and not maybe have, let's say, 50 people inside, but we'd have 200 people outside. People like to, and some shelters are pet friendly and other shelters are not pet friendly. And that just kind of depends on where things are and what communities affected and what the needs are. So a lot of times people will sleep in tents or their cars or their travel trailers in parking lots so that they can be with their animals, and then go inside the shelters to access all the community resources and get the information. Oftentimes people ask us and like, well, where's my pre-identified shelter if I was to evacuate? And really, that's just so variable because we have this national registry of all of the available potential shelters, but we're not going to activate them all at the same time, right? So when we had like the winter storm in Eugene about 4 or 5 years ago, the hardest hit area was in the South Hills and with all the tree limbs that came crashing down. And that's where they had the most amount of power outages. And so we activated one shelter that was at the middle school in the South Hills. Now, when we had the other wildfire, the Holiday Farm fire, we used Churchill High School as the shelter. So it just is dependent upon any disaster. So kind of building a disaster kit here, this is a snapshot of the things that you will want to have. I'm a believer that you have canned goods and you have freeze dry. I mean, everyone makes their choice about kind of what they would need or what they want in each of their kind of disaster kits, but you should have one for your house and also one in your car and another one in the work office. I was talking to Bonnie earlier and I was telling her that my parents live in Reno so we went down there for Christmas and it's about an 8 or 9 hour drive. And I'm used to driving the road. And in the wintertime, whether it's Thanksgiving or Christmas, I always go because the Northern California section is like 3 hours in the middle of nowhere. There's like 2 really small towns. Half the time you're not in cell coverage and it's just a lot of wide open space. So I always go down there with 2 big water bottles full of hot water with freeze-dried meals with like food just to eat right then and there. I go with sleeping bags. And then this year, because I hit that window kind of like right before the winter storm hit, I even went out and bought like a tow rope just in case like me or somebody else got stuck in the snowbank, and shovels. I mean, honestly, the car was just equally loaded with Christmas presents as it was with like emergency gear. I felt like a little too much, but yet at the same time, you never ever know. Especially like down south on I-5, if you've heard kind of like from Ashland into Northern California, that section of the highway gets shut down several times a year. And those poor people are going to be stuck in their cars for 12 hours. Like, that's no fun. You'll be hungry and cold. So that's one of the reasons why. So, these are the types of things you would want to have in your supply kit. So obviously, first aid, batteries, lights, all those things that if you were to put yourself, like visually put yourself in a scenario, say, what would I wish I would have had, right? Extra chargers. Another thing is, printed maps. I mean, we're so reliant on Google Maps on our phones to get us from here to there, but, having a printed map of the state and, and even to the county roads to get you around to navigating, because roads are going to be blocked. And there was during the Holiday Farm fire, I don't know if you've heard about the campers that they evacuated a campground, and it was the fire service that took them on the county like logging roads and county back roads, left turn here, right turn there, left turn here. You're not going to have that on the main map. But when the main highway is blocked, that was their only way out, and knowing how to navigate it. A lot of times what people don't think about is having cash, right? For, just spending. Because if you're out of power, you can't use credit cards, you can't go to the ATMs, or, you and everybody else went to an ATM and there's no more 20s left, or you do have a 20, but then you have to buy cash and you don't have ones in, if you go and buy a gallon of water that costs $2 and you only have a 20 and they don't have change, well, you just spent $20 on a gallon of water. So, the recommendation is you get small bills, get 1s and 5s, and you already have it stored up. And then also like the comfort food, right? Like, I love Dove chocolate. And so like every time you're having a rough day, have a piece of chocolate, everything's fine. So you have, the multi-tool or your knife, just like MacGyver. Duct tape and a pocket knife will get you anywhere. And also, having like a whistle, for, identifying, like, in case you got stuck in a road someplace, you could blow your whistle and people could hear you. So really, the next thing is you have all the what you should do, but then it's also doing it, right? So reviewing and updating your kits and plans annually, and checking your smoke alarms, and talking about the things that you want to kind of learn about, and put your kits together a little bit better. One thing that we did when we first moved out to Oregon is, like for Christmas, my parents said, what do you want for Christmas? And I'm like, I kind of have everything, right? I don't want another pair of shoes. I don't want another sweater. Like I don't know, what do I want, right? It's kind of hard to think about what to get. So what you can do is just buy your kids or buy your family members like emergency radios, or buy one of those tubs of freeze-dried food that's good for 10 or 15 years, or buy a big Rubbermaid thing on wheels. When you have your emergency kit, you can have it any way you want. You can have a large tub with rolling wheels, you can have it in a backpack, like whatever you want, wherever your space is. What I also recommend to people is just don't put all your eggs in one basket. Like, be a squirrel. Like, squirrel a little here, squirrel a little there. If you put everything into your garage and then your garage collapses or it burns down, you just lost everything, right? So keep some in the back shed, or keep some in another location, wherever you can, just so not all of it's kind of wiped out at once. So just contingency planning like that. And then, people often ask about water. Like, that's just a big issue. And I wish I could give you a really easy answer for it, but it's a needed thing. And whether it's the gallon water jugs that you buy at the grocery store, or it's other plastic bottles, you think about over time, that stuff kind of degenerates anyway, and you have to rotate it out. They have got like 5-gallon water jugs. The thing is, I had several of those. I kept them outside in the sun. I moved them, like a rock, like binged it, and then all the water drained out because it was kind of dry and brittle. And then a rock just like popped a hole in it, and I lost all the water. So, I mean, you just have to make your own choice about how or what and where you want to store the water, but it is critical. I think one thing that is always a good thing to have is just one of those like UV water bottle, like water sanitizer things that you get like the camping stores. People that hike the Appalachian Trail, they can just fill up the water bottle from a stream, the UV treat it, and then you have it. So just, and the other thing is, Rome wasn't built in, overnight, right? Nothing was ever done overnight. So the thing is, the thing that you want to do more is just like take that first step. Just do that one little thing. Or, one of the members in my Rotary Club, I gave this preparedness presentation, and over Christmas, his daughter's in college. They said, you know what? Over Christmas, we made our disaster kit. They got the prepare guide, which you can also find online. And they just started going through and building everything. And so they felt lock solid. We did our work and we're good. So it's just taking that first step. The other things that we really want to encourage people to do is, one, donate blood. I mean, right now the Red Cross and all the other agencies across, the blood collection agencies across the country, we are in a national blood crisis. It got launched on January 11th, and what that ultimately means is that we only have enough, like 25% of patients in hospitals are not getting the blood that they need. And it's where, I mean, it's compounded by a lot of different issues. Omicron, having less donors turn out. We had a lot of winter storms that we had to force to cancel blood drives. So if you are able to give blood, and there's a real easy way of thinking about it. Let's say there's 100 people in the room. 33 of the 100 people are able to give blood. Age-wise, you can be 16, 17 years old to give blood. You can be 99 years old and still give blood. There's no age limit for donating. You just have to be healthy. And then sometimes you travel out of the country, or your iron level's too low, or medication, or you're like served in Europe during mad cow disease, all these different deferrals, right? So 33 out of 100 people can give blood, but only 3% actually give blood. So, and of that, we've had a 10% reduction of blood donors since August. Ever since Delta hit, 10% less people have been donating blood, and our margins are like narrow thin. So we're in a national blood crisis, and what you can do is get on to redcrossblood.org, type in your zip code, and you can find the blood drives that are in the Corvallis and Linn County areas that are close by. And then also the Red Cross, you know, we are a nonprofit organization. Sometimes people think we're quasi-governmental because of the work we do nationally with disasters and working alongside, you know, FEMA and, you know, local emergency managements, but we are a nonprofit, and 90% of all that's fundraised goes and directly supports the programs, which is great. We have, you know, 4-star charity navigator. And then also 90% of our workforce is also volunteers. So here at the bottom, the best thing you can do, if you just follow us on Facebook, find out what's going on, find all the tips and tricks. If you see us more frequently, you know, share the content with others so others people are aware, and then hopefully you'll be better prepared. So I will, I think, stop sharing my screen and get back to me. Hi.
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much. That was really interesting. And then also like I feel like really approachable. Like so I have sat through some preparedness sessions where sometimes I feel a little overwhelmed. But I like your approach a lot. And it's like just taking those few simple steps can really make a huge difference. I was also really impressed with the 1 to 374 ratio, people to first responders. Wow, it really underscores the importance of preparedness.
Yep.
We don't have any questions yet, so those of you out in the audience, please ask your questions. We are a pretty small group, so we definitely have time for your questions. I did send the audience a link to the prepare guide because I was able
Oh,
to find
cool.
that online pretty easily. But yeah, I think it would be great if we could distribute some of those from the Corvallis Library. I would like that. So we're just waiting for your questions.
I get lots of questions. I tried to kind of eliminate the water question, the this and that question. Like I've done this a few times. So
So you may have anticipated them.
yeah.
I kind of forgot about the smoke alarm campaign that you guys do, the home fire campaign. I remember hearing about that years ago and kind of forgot that that was a thing. So that was
Yeah,
that's a
no,
great resource.
yeah, we are resuming that. We kind of took a lull, you know, because of COVID and everything else, but our Red Cross volunteers and staff are all 100% vaccinated. Sorry, we have, you know, everybody's good that way. We're also background checked too. So this is what we do. If you have, sometimes what we'll do is we'll target a specific neighborhood, like a mobile home park, and we'll canvas in advance, let people know that we're coming. But then also, and people can call in for appointments. But then if you know, just kind of hear about it, it's like, oh, you know what, this lady at my church or this other person I know, she would need a smoke alarm. You'd be surprised the number of people that I give like Rotarians, like community service groups, and people said, I bought my house 20 years ago and I never changed my smoke alarms. They think because it's hardwired that it's good. And it's not that you push the button and it makes a noise, right? That's, you know, that's good. But the problem is, does it detect, right? The sensing for the smoke, like disintegrates over time or isn't as effective over time. And so that's where, yeah, you push the button, it beeps, but there's like 2 years ago, I think we were doing 2, 3 years ago, we were doing a smoke alarm in Springfield. And so we keep data on this of how many people live in the household and youth and seniors and veterans and how many pre-existing smoke alarms were there and how many of them worked, two separate questions. So like I remember going into this lady's house and I said, well, you know, where's your smoke alarm? She's like, well, it's right there. So I take it off the wall and you can tell like on the smoke alarm, it's written the expiration, like when it was made. And it was, if you see a yellow smoke alarm, it's definitely old, right? This thing was like 15 years old. but it didn't have a battery in it.
Oh
And so I
no.
took it off the wall. She thought it worked. And it's like, there's no battery. And so sometimes people just say, oh, I forgot I was cooking. I took the battery out. The other thing is you don't want to have it close to the bathroom because the steam will set it off. Um, and I learned also the lesson of like my daughter was sick one time and we had the humidifier going and it, you know, I kind of like closed the room just to have like all the steam inside the room. And then when we opened it up, our smoke alarm went off because the steam went out into the hallway and set off the smoke alarm. So it just, you know, those things happen. But
Yeah.
I think, yeah, the very first house that was saved across the country was in Georgia. And I was with the Red Cross in Georgia at the time. And it was a Boy Scout troop that was helping the Red Cross canvas and install and all that. And this lady did not have she did not have a single smoke alarm in her house. And a lot of people don't. Like you think it's the law, they should have this. Well, sometimes it just is, right? They just don't have it. So we give them smoke alarms. And so that happened on a Saturday. And then on a Monday, she was cleaning, like self-cleaning her oven. So the oven got turned up to like 500 or 600 degrees. And she took a nap on the couch. And she forgot that she left a grease pan in the oven. And the grease pan caught fire and started the fire in her kitchen. And the newly installed smoke alarms detected her, you know, alerted her that a fire was in her house. And that was just 2 days after she had the smoke alarms put in. So stuff happens, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, and I've been guilty of like the candle thing of like burning a candle like on my coffee table and then like realizing that I'm drifting off to sleep and being like,
Yes.
what are you doing? Blow out the candle. But you know, just like I don't mean to. It's just it's at night. I'm enjoying the ambiance of the candle, and then you know, before you know it, you nod off and you've got a disaster on your hands.
Or how many times you boiled the water out of a pot and left it on the stove?
Yes, I've
I've done
done
that
that.
many times.
I've done that.
I've done that
So, yeah.
all.
We did get a good question to come in. This is a good one. I am not sure, but is it possible for international students to donate blood? Are there any rules or anything?
Yep. So you can give blood. Um, and so really the requirements are that you have an ID. It's just an ID for um, like your home country ID, your student ID, you know, like whatever government issued ID, and that you are at the residence for the next 8 weeks, just so that they can kind of communicate with you. And so the Red Cross, we manage our blood only within the Red Cross. We don't send our blood to other countries. We don't receive blood from other countries because the Red Cross, our blood supply is mandated and regulated by the FDA. So, and I just gave blood Thursday last week. And so there's like 50 questions or 52 questions that you have to ask. Like it's not, even though you're like a 5-gallon donor, you still have to answer the questions every single time because that's just how it is. But yeah, yeah, you can give blood. And people often ask, well, what if you had COVID or you had the vaccine? So you can give blood because the COVID vaccine doesn't affect your blood at all. So even if you had COVID or you had the vaccine, it's a respiratory thing, not a blood thing. So you are able to give it. And one of the questions that they added on recently was like, did you get a vaccination? Yes. If you got the COVID shot, and what brand was it? You just have to be able to verbally say, you know, Pfizer, Moderna, or Johnson and Johnson, just for you to say it. And then if you don't remember, they'll just say, okay, we'll come back in 2 weeks, and then you just come back in 2 weeks. But it's but yeah, if you are able to give, I mean, honestly, it is coming down to the fact that doctors are deciding who gets blood, to be real honest about it. Like when you got 5 cancer or 20 cancer patients on the floor and they're all in their different levels of treatment, right? Who's going to get that unit and who can maybe wait a day? They would
Gosh.
all give it now if they could. But it's, to be honest, that's what's happening in 25% of the hospitals that's what's happening. So please,
Wow.
if it's been, and you can donate every 56 days. And what I do is like sometimes my iron is low. It's generally low. I just take women's vitamins for 10 days beforehand just to boost my iron up. I get over my 12.5. I donate blood. I don't like taking pills every day because I'll just forget. But I take it like the 10 to 14 days before I donate blood just to get my iron up. And then they can prick your finger 2 times, to see which one gets the higher level, and then boom, you're good. So I make it work for myself.
And I went ahead and just shared the link that I think you mentioned earlier about where you can go to try to find a place to give blood if you're interested in doing that. So,
Perfect. Thank you.
yeah. And we don't have any other questions, so I think we could go ahead and wrap up a little bit early, but go ahead and furiously type in your question if I'm going too fast for anybody, but I kind of doubt it since we haven't heard from anybody else. I want to thank you so much for your time, Carissa. This
Yeah.
is really great. This is very informative. As I mentioned to the audience, we are doing a recording of this, so you will get a link to it. So if you need to come back to any of this information or you want to share it with other people, please do so. So yeah, thanks again, Carissa. I really appreciate it.
All right. Take care. Thank you.
All right. Bye bye, everybody. Thanks for your time today. We'll see
All
you
right.
next time. Take care.
Bye.